Hello, this is Andrine, a Jewish American priestess, and I'm here today with a timeless reading. We're going to do a timeless reading using the Sovereign Oracle and Nordic runes, as well as the Hebrunes, the Hebrew letter runes. The way we're going to do this today is we're going to pull out a card from the Sovereign Oracle that will help us to guide us into our reading on the topic of what is it we need for connection right now? What is the connecting piece that needs to happen for whatever connection needs to happen, whether that's with oneself, with the divine, with the earth, with nature, with another person. So we're going to pick out 3 cards today. There's number 1. And then you'll take a look at these cards. We'll put the timestamps down below. And we're going to do some readings around that. Card number 2. And here is card number 3. All right, taking a look at card number 1, we have the word co-creation. Co-creation. Number 2, container. And card number 3 brings us discernment. Okay, take a minute to discern which of these 3 cards is calling to you, which of these 3 words is calling to you today. I'll put the timestamps down below, and I will look forward to seeing you in your reading. Hello, card number 1. Those of you who chose co-creation, let's take a read. It says, let go of competition, relax ideas of perfection, embrace play/mates, let the expression of your gifts create opportunities for others. Co-creation. All right, well, to start out, it sounds like one of the ways to connect is going to be creating with others in some way, creating play, creating expression of your gifts, and finding opportunities to connect with others. I'm noticing that this is a little bit hard to read when it's flat, so I'm going to tuck a little bit of a crystal underneath it there. And let's start by pulling out 3 Hebrunes. We'll lay those down on the right side. At the top of our reading we have the letter Zayin. In the center, the letter Dalet. And below we have the letter Vav. Nice. Actually, I think I'm going to scooch that into the center here. And then let's pull out some Nordic runes as well. Let's see what they have to say. And at the top, we have the letter Iwaz. In the center, we have the letter Raitho. And at the bottom, we have the letter Tewaz. All right, starting on the Hebrew side, we have the letter Zayin. Zayin is the letter that means a sword or a scepter, so it's about sovereignty. And this position in the reading is what is up right now. What is up right now is sovereignty, personal sovereignty, the sovereignty of the divine. It is the number 7 in Gematria, so in that case it speaks to completion. Something has come to an end perhaps right now. Maybe there's been a completion of some kind of connection and it's time to transform into something new. The Zayin represents that power, sword and scepter, as well as lightning. It is the letter that corresponds to the month of Sivan. Sivan is the month where we receive Torah or teaching from the mountain, and the mountain was covered with cloud and lightning. So there's something about power here, something about your power, the power of the divine. And again, that number 7, which is that completion number because of 7 days of creation. So because we have 7 days of creation, this letter also connects with the Shekhinah, who is the indwelling presence of the divine, the Shabbat bride. The 7th day of creation was, of course, Shabbat, the day where we rest. So when something comes to an end, creation in this case, we take time to rest, and we tap into our inner power, that indwelling presence of the divine, which is the Shekhinah. And that's what's up right now, this idea of power and sovereignty and connection with divinity while we rest in a completion time. So that seems to be what is the main issue for this connection, this co-creation. And on the Nordic rune side, we have the letter Iwas. And Iwas looks like this. And it looks like, it looks a little bit like Sowilo, which is the source energy, but it's a tree instead. And so that's really interesting to me, because when I'm doing this reading right now, we're in the month of Shvat, which is the month of the birthday of the trees. This tree is a yew tree in specific, and it represents stability and patience and long endurance. The yew tree is notoriously slow growing. So it's about having been patient, maybe being patient right now, persevering through whatever is going on in your life, and it's also personal power. Again, strength, similar, very similar to the Zayin in that case. So there's something about power, something about endurance that is up right now for this idea of connection. And we need to endure or have endured at this point something that's really powerful, something that has to do with our own power. And I think that with regards to co-creation, that whatever is coming to an end, and it's important to tap into our own power and to persevere through whatever changes are happening here, because something has come to an end, something is stopping right now, and it may seem like it's completely stopped, but because the yew tree is such a slow growing tree, there's probably growth happening underneath it all. So be aware that remaining stable and persevering through this time, holding on to one's own strength and inner power, will get you through this situation toward co-creation, toward a connection again. So that's what's up in the present in both sides here. Looking at the Hebrew side, in the center letter, this position is the position of what is our fear or our concern or challenge right now. And we have the letter Dalet. And Dalet is a doorway. It's all about transformation and change. Doorways are transitional liminal spaces. They are the place where we cross over to another room, from the indoors to the outdoors, from the outdoors to the indoors, from the womb into life, and from life into the afterlife. So Dalet has a lot of power, but also liminality here. So there's absolutely a concern or a fear here about this transition. What is happening? What is coming to an end? And what is coming next? And we don't know, because we're standing in the doorway right now. Dalet is the letter that begins the word Dal, which means poor or humble. And so I think of it in terms of remaining humble while we go through this transition, as a piece of advice around this fear or challenge. If we can remain humble, we won't smack our head on the door. So, and Dalet it's the number 4. So it has this connection with the 4 elements, the earth, air, fire, and water, the 4 directions, which are north, south, east, and west, as well as the 4 letters of the divine name, Yud He Vav He, So there's something about holding on to those four pieces, really turning oneself to the elements, really turning in, looking in every direction as you pass through the doorway, and also turning over the name of the divine as you walk through that doorway, because that's the thing that's going to hold us. Oftentimes in a Jewish home, you will see a mezuzah in the doorway. That mezuzah is there as an amulet. It's there to remind us. It's there to remind us that the divine is with us when we transition, when we walk through whatever it is we're walking through. The divine is there with us, and we can touch in, we can tap in with the divine as we do that. Dalet is the binary transformation of wisdom and foolishness. So we're in this difficult place of transitioning from one place to another. Something has come to an end, and we need to move forward wisely. And maybe that's with that stability and endurance, with that patience. So as we go through this threshold, we need to do it with humbleness, with wisdom, if possible, or at least to be aware of our foolishness if we're choosing foolishness. And also tap into the divine, tap into all four directions as you walk through a doorway. Maybe pause right now as you step forward into that next place. Interestingly, on the left side with the Nordic runes, we have the letter Rai, though, in the center, and that is also about movement. It is the letter that means ride. It's riding, so going forward. And that's a challenge or a fear as well. How do we move forward after something has come to an end? How do we move forward after we've been patient and enduring in really slow growth? How do we progress? It looks like, again, nothing has been progressing for some time, although that growth has been slow. How do we ride forward in the right way? How do we proceed now? What growth will come out of this change that is happening, out of this slow growth? And so there's that fear, again, about moving forward. And we may feel stuck in the doorway right now. We may be feeling stuck in that liminal space, that we don't know how to co-create, that maybe we have issue with competition, as the card says. Maybe we don't know how to express ourselves exactly. So the fear here is moving forward movement. And it's a concern. It's for sure a concern. But I think because we've had slow growth, and it seems like things have been still, being aware that movement needs to happen is the next step. And fascinatingly, on the Hebrew side, our outcome letter is the letter Vav. And the letter Vav is all about connection. It's the letter that literally means and in Hebrew. It is the number 6 in Gematria, and so it has to do with that, the day Friday, that preparation for connection with the divine. It is something that is rooted deep in the ground and reaching up toward heaven, like a tall person standing up, or like a seed that has sprouted above the ground. And since it is literally the word and in Hebrew, it's all about connection. And this is sort of our outcome position. So our outcome is looking like connection will happen here. It has to do with the sense of hearing in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. And since we're talking about co-creation here, I think that's pertinent, that we have this sense of hearing, that we need to spend some time listening really firmly to what is coming in communication, both from our inner knowing, from the divine, and maybe from another person with whom we're attempting to connect. Hearing, listening. It is the letter that represents the 6 directions. So we've come from the 4 directions, which are north, south, east, and west. Vav also includes above and below. And if you look at Zayin, go back to Zayin, that's the 7th direction, looking within. That's your personal power. So we have 4 directions, 6 directions, and 7 directions here. We're looking in all the directions. We're looking above, we're looking below. We're looking north, south, east, and west. And it is the center of the divine name. So those 4 letters we talked about with the Dalet, the Yud, He, Vav, He, this is the center point of the divine. So it's connecting presence with presence. Both parties that are working toward this connection need to come together and remain present and hear and listen. It is the letter that corresponds to the gallbladder in the body. And so I think about it as something when somebody has a lot of gall. They have maybe some anger, or maybe they have a lot of chutzpah to be able to come forward and connect. That they are letting go of competition. They're taking some courage to step forward and express the gifts to create the opportunities with or for others. So that's what's going on in the final outcome letter on the Hebrew side. Whereas on the Nordic runes side, we have the letter Tiwaz. Tiwaz is affiliated with the god Tyr. Tyr is the warrior god. So it does have to do with contention on some level, but also duty and justice and following one's path, maybe even self-sacrifice. Because Tyr is the one who sacrificed his hand to the wolf Fenrir in order to delay Ragnarok, which is the battle at the end of time. So Tyr is the sky god. He's a warrior, but he also is about logical thought, rationality, duty, and justice. So something that will come out of this may be a bit of a sacrifice, not a complete sacrifice, but some bit of sacrifice in order to make peace, maybe to lay down one's weapons. There might be a little contention in the end with that reconnection or with that co-creation that's happening. But I think in the big picture, it's more about making a choice to come together in connection rather than being stubbornly fighting. Because it does say let go of competition here on the card, and a lot of times those contentions have to do with competition. And I think Tyr, although famous for war, is more about duty and justice and will and making a good choice based on one's own understanding of the situation, regardless of what others might think. So for those of you who chose co-creation, as I said, we're starting out with some personal sovereignty here. Maybe something has come to an end, that we've endured whatever trial that has come about. We're tapping into our divine indwelling presence and taking a rest right now. A rest so much that it seems like we're stopping. A Shabbat rest, but the growth is happening slowly underneath. That although we may be having trouble with the transition about what to do when we walk forward and moving forward with that Raido, that we need to focus on tapping in with the divine as we step through the doorway, even if it's challenging. And when we do, we'll come through to connection. Connection with a sense of maybe a little self-sacrifice, but there is justice and choosing one's own path in the duty here of connecting with others, letting go of that competition, releasing your ideas of perfection, embracing play, and letting the expression of your gifts create opportunities for others. So for those of you who chose co-creation today, this has been your reading. If you do enjoy these readings, please do like and subscribe to this channel, and I'll look forward to seeing you here next time. Hello, card number 2. Those of you who chose container. Let's read this. It says, be intentional about what or who you wish to show up in the space you have provided. Set the energy for the endeavor up front. Hold space for spirit and trust. Container. I'm going to grab a little stone here to tuck underneath so that we can see that better as we read. So container sounds to me like setting up appropriate space for creating connection. That it's not about just letting anyone into your situation here, but being intentional about who and what you wish to show up and setting the energy up front, being really clear about boundaries, and then holding space for spirit. So that's lovely. That's a great way to create connection. We're going to pull out 3 Hebrunes today and 3 Nordic runes. Let's start with the Hebrunes. At the top of our reading, we have the letter Yud. In the center, we have the letter Dalet. And at the bottom, we have the letter Lamed. All right, and 3 Nordic runes as well. At the top, we have the letter Yira. In the center, we have the letter Ingwaz. And at the bottom, we have the letter Theresa. All right, starting on the Hebrew side, we'll start with the letter Yud. This is the position of what's our current situation here regarding this connection that we're trying to foster. We have the letter Yud, which is a seed. It's the letter that, for me, represents that one point out of which everything is created. It's a seed that holds the potential for everything within it. It's the first letter of the divine name, the Yud He Vav He. And so it represents the atom, which is the building block of the universe. The seed that contains all the trees within it, and the one point into which the divine contracted themselves so that the Big Bang could happen and everything could be created out of that. It is the first letter of the word Yad, which means hand, so using one's hand for creation, as well as the foundation of sexuality in the Sefer Yetzirah, so that idea of a sperm that has the potential to create life within it. It's the smallest of all the letters, but it has the potential for everything within it. So what's happening right now with regards to this container is you have a seed, something, maybe I think about it in terms of a container. Maybe you're starting to plant a seed, that you're putting a seed in the container and you're not sure what's going to grow. It has the potential for everything, creation here, and artisanship and creativity, handiwork. It's the number 10 in Gematria, so although it is the smallest of the letters, it's 10 times 1. So again, that potential for so much sitting right there within the Yud. It is the left kidney in the body, and the tribe of Gad, which represents luck in the Hebrew tribes. So there's a lot here. There's a lot of potential here. Maybe it doesn't seem like very much. What's going on right now maybe not seem like very much, but there's the potential for everything within it. Whether that seed ripens and becomes fruit, we will not know until that happens, but the potential is there, and we're setting this seed within the container, maybe a fertile container that can grow. And that could be a fertile container that's soil that you're planting that seed in, or a womb that is creating life within it. And it's important to set that seed intentionally, that you have the energy for the endeavor up front. And then you have to let go. Once one plants the seed, there it is. And it is out of one's control at that point. That's an important thing to remember at this moment where it seems like there's not very much happening, that there's just a seed, just a little dot, nothing much. But once we let go, we have to give it over to Spirit and trust that it will turn out the way it's meant to be. And over on the left side in the Nordic runes, we have the Yira, which is fascinating because it is the harvest. So it's almost like the opposite of this. This is the seed and this is the harvest. So we have maybe two things happening at the same time. That this is our reward. This is the gain that we have reaped from the previous harvest season. That maybe it's out of this harvest that seed has come. There's been a reward and gain. This is about time and about cycles and seasons. And so it may be about time. Maybe right now there's a concern about time. Maybe there's a concern that one is running out of time. But there are cycles that happened, and the harvest has come, and we are reaping the rewards of that harvest right now. And as we set up this container for the next connection, it's important to remember the harvest. Perhaps we've been in a relationship where we've learned some lessons, and it's important to take those lessons with us as we move into the next connection, so that we can make sure that we are being intentional about what is showing up, that we are setting good boundaries. If there's been issues before, maybe we can say, this thing that happened before is not a thing I want to have happen again, and so here's the boundary that I need to set for myself, that if the other person does X, then I will do Y, or whatever the case may be. So there is potential here for newness, but we're also bringing with us the harvest from previous encounters. And that's a really important lesson to bring with us into this container right now. And as we step into the center position here, we've got the position of what is a fear or a challenge in our situation. On the right side, we have the letter Dalet. And the letter Dalet is the letter that represents a door, some kind of portal or threshold. And so it's a liminal space. It's that middle space. And we're in the position of what is a fear or a challenge, always of concern stepping through a doorway, because we don't know what's on the other side of that doorway. It's really hard to know. And so as we step through that doorway, how are things going to turn out? There's definitely a fear around that. The letter Dalet has the connotation of humility within it. The word Dal, which means a poor one, is somebody who maybe stands with their head bowed a little bit. I often say that when we're walking through the door, we will want to make sure we keep our head low so that we don't smack our head on the top of the door. The Dalet can be challenging in that we're in that in-between phase, coming from one thing and moving on to another. Sometimes the Dalet represents the birth canal. So if you've been in the womb and you know no other life, it may feel like a death to come through it. So maybe we're in that birthing phase where it feels really, really hard right now to get out through that doorway to the other side. And we don't really know. Maybe we've been in a container of some sort and now we're coming into a different container, from one room into another, from one home into another. Whatever the case may be, the Dalet can be really challenging. It is a number 4 in Gematria, and so it does represent the 4 seasons, the spring, summer, winter, and fall. And it represents those 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water. And it might be worthwhile tapping in to each of the directions, each of the seasons, each of the elements in order to understand where you are in space before you walk through. Because containers, they have edges, right? So we need to look at all of the edges to see what we're walking into. Maybe we're creating this container and we have to assess our situation here before stepping in, before creating or setting up that space. But we also have to hold space for spirit. And the 4 in the Dalet also represents the 4 letters of the divine name Yud He Vav He, which is a contraction of the verbs to be, meaning past, present, and future, was, is, and will be. What are we becoming here? And maybe we don't know yet. It's a really hard thing to be, is in this liminal space of the unknown as we pass through that doorway. And over on the left side, we have the letter Ingwaz, which interestingly represents a seed. So we've come from the harvest into a seed, whereas we've come from a seed into a transition here on the right side. The Ingwaz represents the god Ing, who is the fertility god. And he represents using what one has to create what one can. And there's a fear around that too. Will this seed grow? Will this seed be barren? Will it die? We don't actually know. But when we have a seed like this, it's important to consider the internal growth, consider what we need to do to nourish it. And the fear or challenge here is nourishing that seed, accepting that that seed exists and is here whether we like it or not, that there is this potential, and we get to choose how we're going to nurture it. So I think that's really interesting that we have the seed here twice, one in the position of where we are and one in the position of what's the fear or challenge. So we have a seed, and the fear is also the seed. The seed has potential, but what will come of it, we do not know. And we have that transition that we have to figure out. Well, we're going into this container. Are we putting the seed in the container? Is the seed already in the container? Is the container fertile? Will it have the ability to allow for growth? And that's the question here, right? And we have the outcome letter on the right side, the lamed. The lamed is the letter that begins the word lev, lev meaning heart, heart, mind, in fact. In the ancient Hebrew, the mind and the heart were not separate. It was understood that when one uses one's mind, the heart is involved intricately, intimately in that thought process, that we have to listen to our heart in order to have a really good concept of what it is that we're intending to do. The lamed is the one letter that reaches above the line in Hebrew, so it has this connotation of aspiration or hope. It's reaching up. So if you think about this as a seed that's been planted in the ground, the ground being across here, that seed has sprouted a root and it's sprouted a sprout. So the potential for outcome here is great growth in the heart, great growth in connection with the earth and with the divine and with one's own heart. It's the first letter of the word limud velamed, which means learning and teaching. And so there's something that we're learning here, and there's something perhaps that we are teaching as well. But it does call back to aspiration and hope. There's hope here. After all of this, after the seed has been planted and after that doorway has been crossed through, the hope is here. The reaching up with heart for the divine is available to us as we move on to the next phase of this container, that we've created a container, we've planted a seed in it, that transition, that birth has been considered, that we're maybe standing in that doorway, but as we come through it, we have aspiration, hope, learning, teaching. It's the foundation of action in the Sefer Yetzirah, so maybe it's time to take action. The action will come through all of this, and that we'll have the ability to digest and absorb. This is the intestines in the body. So as we bring information, spirituality, food into ourselves, we need to take time to let that process through our intestines, right? So that we can absorb what's appropriate and discard what is no longer necessary. So I love that that this actually looks a little bit like a digestive tract in the body. Like we're taking stuff in, we're learning from it, maybe we're even teaching from it, and then we're releasing the rest. So the lamed is here to remind us to reach our hearts up toward the divine. And when I hear that chime, it always says to me, this is the divine speaking as well. So reach up with heart as we come through this transitional period. And over on the left side, this is fascinating, we have the letter Theresa, which is the letter that represents a door and a gateway. So it's like they're opposite each other almost. The seed, the door, the door. So the outcome on the left side is Theresa, the door. Now, it's a challenging door. There's no question about it. It's a thorn. Sometimes it's seen as a giant or some kind of gate, but it's not upside down, so it's not indefensible. It is possible to pass through the door. We just need to muster up our strength and walk through. So in the outcome of this, Theresa, we have to break down some boundaries. Maybe there'll be a little bit of force that's required. But that seed requires breaking in order to grow. So, like I said, we've got this seed here, we've got this seed here. Potential. Challenge is how do we break through that seed? And the answer is just break through it. You've got to walk through that door. You've got to walk through the door. And it's like this is almost circular. You've got seed, doorway, heart. harvest seed doorway. So I love that. I love that your container contains the entirety of the cycle, where you have a harvest, a seed, a doorway, a doorway, and that sprout again coming up at the bottom. So whatever it is you're trying to connect with, whether it's with yourself, whether with the divine or with another person, remember that the potential is here. From the harvest comes the seed. From the seed, we have to break through the doorway. Break through the doorway, it gives us the ability to sprout up and make connection, to hold space. If we set the energy, if we can set the intention, if we can be intentional about what seeds we're planting and who we wish to show up in our space that we've provided, then we will have growth. And that growth will bring us heart, mind, will bring us learning and teaching. It'll bring us the ability to digest and absorb what it is we need to learn, and above all, hope for the next harvest, perhaps. So for those of you who chose container today, this has been your reading. If you like my readings, please do like and subscribe, and I'll look forward to seeing you here next time. Hello, card number 3. Those of you who chose the card Discernment, let's read it. It says, establish what's yours and what isn't. Be conscious about your yes and create permeable boundaries. Discernment. Well, right off the bat, I would say that your reading is saying whatever connection that you're thinking about with regards to this, whether it's with yourself, with the divine, or with another human being, it's important to be discerning, right? That's the obvious message. That you need to discern what you have power over and what you do not have power over. Be understanding about where you are able to commit, and also set up good boundaries for yourself so that you're not walking into something that will harm you in any way. Let's pull out some Hebrunes and Nordic runes as well to get further information about this connection. In our current situation, we have the letter Gimel. Our fear or challenge is the letter Dalet. Wow. Okay. And our outcome is the letter Vav. Fascinating. On the left side, with the Nordic runes, at the top of our reading, we have the letter Fehu. In the center is the letter Manas. And at the bottom, we have the letter Theresa. This is very interesting. And I say that because we have some of the same letters in the same position. Dalet showed up in this position in every reading today, so definitely up for whatever is connecting right now. So starting on the right side with the letter Gimel at the very top of our reading, we have the letter that represents a foot or a camel walking forward. Can we see this card okay? Maybe I put a little stone under it to prop it up. Let's see here. There we go. So we have the letter Gimel, and Gimel again represents a foot or a camel. So it's about moving forward, and it's moving forward relatively quickly. It's not a slow movement. It's a running forward or a stepping forward lively. It is the letter that represents the binary transformation of peace and evil. Peace, which is shalom in Hebrew, and also means wholeness, not just absence of war. So we have this idea of wholeness and maybe brokenness. Evil could be could be perceived as something that's broken. And it's often said that Gimel is running toward justice. That's because Gimel rules over the planet Jupiter in the sky, Jupiter, which is called Tzedek in Hebrew, Tzedek meaning justice. So we have this idea of running forward toward justice right now. This is what's going on at this moment for you. It is the letter that represents the number 3 in Gematria. So it has this stability of the 3 elements of fire, water, and air, and harmony of threes, all things 3. It reminds me of the Garden of Eden, Gan Eden, because of that tree of good and evil that was eaten of by the first inhabitants of the garden, and that which caused them to have to leave the garden. So there's something here in this letter that is saying to me, discernment is necessary. Are we making the right choices regarding connection? Are we able to discern what is good and what is not? What is whole and what is broken? Can we make a good discernment right now? And that's the question. I mean, we need to really consider what is mine and what isn't mine. What is a good boundary around whatever relationship I'm thinking of here. And we have on the left side, we have the letter Fehu. This is the first letter of the Futhark, the elder Futhark in the Nordic runes, and it represents cattle, wealth, and worth. Are we feeling worthy? Is there something here right now that is feeling successful? Is there something about our happiness, not necessarily only financial gain, although perhaps there's money involved here, but what is it that we are tending right now in our life that brings us wealth and joy and prosperity? And cattle is the symbol for that, because we tend a herd of cattle, we get success from that. But we don't often tend cattle these days. So what is it we are tending? Is it we are tending our relationships? Are we tending our spirituality? Are we tending our job only? And we're becoming financially rich, but perhaps relationally impoverished. Something is up with regards to what it is we are tending, our wealth and our worth, whether we feel worthy in our relationship, whether we are able to discern what is mine and what isn't. And we're stepping forward toward justice. We're stepping forward on some sort of path that will lead us in a direction. And in our position of what is a challenge, we have the letter Dalet. And like I said, this has shown up in this position in every reading today. So stepping through the doorway is really challenging. I get the message. It's saying that we have to have humility when we walk through. The word dal, which means humble or a poor person, means that we need to bow our heads a little bit as we step through the doorway. It is the binary transformation of wisdom and foolishness. Are we making a wise choice? Do we know what is ours and what isn't? Can we set up good boundaries around that? What threshold are we stepping over? It's the number 4, so it represents the 4 elements, the 4 directions, the 4 letters of the divine name, the Yud He Vav He, and the 4 seasons as well. Are we taking into account all of those things as we step through this doorway? Doorways are challenging sometimes. We have to leave a place in order to go to the other place. And that may seem like a small thing when you're just like going from one room of your house to another. But sometimes those transitions can be really challenging. Are we moving from one home to another? Are we moving from one relationship to another? Are we moving from one attitude to another? Maybe it's not even a physical movement, but it's a conscious movement of ourselves from wisdom to foolishness, or foolishness toward wisdom. Have we felt like a fool, and now we need to move to a place where we feel more wise here? Dalet represents the birth canal. So are we being born from something that has become familiar, something that we have, it's been our comfort zone? We've been inside this womb for so long that we don't really want to get born, but we need to get born because we cannot stay inside forever. And that's true about birth, and it's true about death. So there is some transition that's happening, and it's really challenging. And I'm certain of it because this keeps coming up in every reading. This idea of the challenge, the doorway. How do we walk through? And it's sometimes even represented as a death. So walk forward, hit the doorway. What do we do next? Over on the left side, we have the letter manas. Manas represents humanity and our place in it. And maybe we're having a challenge with that. It looks like this. And if you know anything about the Nordic runes, it looks like two wunyos facing each other. So it's like two people facing each other with joy. The challenge here, connection, our place in humanity. What is our note in the song of humanity? And maybe we're concerned about that. Maybe we're concerned about other people. What do other people think? What is it that other people are saying about us? Maybe we're having a hard time feeling like we're connected to others. And this collective consciousness of humanity, where do we fit into this bigger picture? Our awareness of self in connection with other people is up in the challenge on the left side. So maybe as we walk through this doorway here with the Dalit, we're not sure where we fit. How do we fit in with other people? And that's valid. That's a valid concern. We have to discern. And that's the tricky part, right? Is discernment. Just creating those boundaries so that we can face others with joy. Establishing which is ours and which isn't. And be conscious about saying yes to others in these situations. So big challenges with other people and with stepping through the doorway. And on the outcome position on the right side, we have the letter Vav. And Vav is the letter that means connection in Hebrew. It is literally the letter that means and. It's the word and in Hebrew. And it is the number 6, so it has to do with almost completion. It's 6 days, 6th day of creation, which is the preparation for coming together in rest with Shabbat. It is the letter that again represents those 6 directions. You've got 4 directions with the Dalit and 6 directions with the Vav. So not only north, south, east, and west, but also above and below. Can we look up to the divine and down to the earth as an outcome here? How can we connect? How can we tap root ourselves into the earth and stand up with a tall, slightly bowed head toward divinity? This is the letter that also corresponds to the sense of hearing in the Sefer Yetzirah. So again, about listening. This is in the same position in the first reading of our set today. So if you're at all called to that first card, you might want to go back and listen to that reading too. But listening, tapping into your own sense of self, tapping into the earth and reaching up toward the divine with your head raised high. Vav is also the center of the divine name. It connects presence with presence, the Yud He Vav He. So we need to show up, connect with others with presence, really listening, really hearing each other. I see Vav as connecting to the Lover's card in the tarot. So there's something about the Lover's card which is about connection with another, but also connection with yourself, really learning to love yourself and connection with the divine. So love here is at the end. Love in the form of connection, love in the form of tapping into the earth and reaching up toward divinity, joining the heaven and the earth together. Unity with divinity, first and foremost. On the left side, we have the letter Thurisaz in the final position, Thurisaz, which is the doorway and the gateway. Again, doorway and doorway in this reading, just like we had in the other second reading. So if you were drawn at all to the second reading, you might want to go back and look at that because we have the gateway in the same position. Thurisaz is the letter that corresponds to the god Thor, and he's the thunder god. So he's a little bit challenging, right? So it's sometimes seen as the doorway, the gateway, or the giant. And it's a thorn, so it's It's about being a little bit challenging to get through that doorway. But what the Theresa says in this position of the outcome is you just got to walk through the doorway. Even if it's a challenge, you got to discern what is the right way and just maybe use a little bit of force even just to push your way out. If you're having difficulty figuring out your place in humanity, you still got to step through. There's no choice in the end. In order to get connected, you have to push through the doorway. And that's what it says to me with the Theresas here at the end. I find it fascinating that we have all of these letters in similar places in the reading. That our discernment here is to discern that we have worth, to discern what our worth is and what we're tending right now in our lives, to step forward toward justice. That even if we're having difficulty getting through that doorway, making those transitions, whatever they are for us, we need to be conscious about our yes, to face each other with joy. If it's a challenge, if we're having a hard time finding our place in humanity, remember what our worth is. Remember what it is we're tending. Remember that we're stepping forward toward justice. And when we come out, we come through to connection. We come through to connection with the earth and the divine, as well as connection with another. And we have to make our choices, make our discernments, create those boundaries, maybe a thorny hedge even around ourselves, to create a boundary so that we can show up, push through that doorway, be born, as it were, through that birth canal, and come out the other side. Once we do that, we'll have the appropriate discernment to know what's ours and what isn't, to be conscious about our yes, and to create those permeable boundaries. Thank you so much for watching. For those of you who chose discernment, this has been your reading. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoy these, and I will look forward to seeing you here next time.